turned atheist, and we're here to get to know Bert Poole and to dive into his head as as we still Christian anarchists wording. I'm shameless. I'm a horrible person. Anyway, Bert, how you doing today?
I'm doing fine. A little bit of technical difficulties, but seem to be going pretty well now.
Really
It's hot.
quick, I'm having a technical difficulty. Stand by.
For those who can hear me, it is hot as a bastard here. Oh, there we go.
Hang on, Scott's home. 1 second. I'm trying to fix something. So a setting that I had previously just like magically disappeared, so I had to fix that, and then Scott came home at the same time. So anyway, we're gonna keep on rolling now. So Bert, how you doing here? How you doing today? I know it's blazing hot. It's 105 in San Diego, and you're not far from here in LA. So about what, the same?
I was like 101, 102. It kind of depresses me because when I have a convertible and I have to live with the top up for a couple of days. So white people problems.
You have a convertible?
Yeah.
You're one of those dudes.
Well, I had a minivan for 20 years, so I'm allowed one. Yeah, no,
Gotcha.
things are good. I'm super slammed right now at work. We're wrapping up. Oh, did you already mention that I work at? So I work at Dreamworks, and we're wrapping up Kung Fu Panda, and so I've been pretty busy with that this week. But it's coming in pretty nicely, actually. So it's good.
So how long have you worked at DreamWorks?
This is my 20th year coming up. It'll be 20 years next September. So I just entered my 19th year or 20th year. So and I pretty much came out of college, out of school to work on ants 20 years ago. So it's
Oh,
been
what
a
did you do for
long.
ants again?
I got hired actually as a to do texturing and surfacing. So people don't tend to have a good grasp on computer animation. So if you think of it more like stop motion animation, where you have, it's not like hand drawn animation at all. It's like stop motion animation where you have physical properties that you're animating. You put in armatures and you build out muscles, and you have to describe everything. You have to explain to the computer how everything shades and how everything works. And then animators go through and animate all the frames, and we have cameras with focal lengths and translations, and we have lights with certain exposures and can shadow things. And so it's much more like working in a stop motion animation in the computer. So I was doing all of the surfacing of all of the ants in the environments. There was myself and another guy primarily, and a couple of other people who handled all of it for ants. And I actually ended up lighting shots by the middle of ants, and then I kind of went that direction. So then on Shrek, I surfaced Fiona. I and did some of the hair development and the skin development, and but then I transitioned more into a lighting role. So I'd kind of go on to films early, do a couple of key characters, and help out with that effort, and then move into lighting the film. And now I'm a CG supervisor or a sequence supervisor on the films.
Very cool. What is your personal favorite project that you worked on?
Uh, How to Train Your Dragon's easily the my favorite. The both those films are very very special to me, and I was on the first one for like 3 years, so it was a big personal investment. It was a for for a portion of my career, that's a pretty large chunk. Those are they're very fun to work on. They have there's an interesting phenomenon where you don't want them to end so that you can keep working on them because they're such a joy to work on. But you want to see the whole thing put together. So it's kind of this damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like you're kind of stuck wanting to work on it, but not wanting it to end, but wanting to see it. And so
It's really cool. I mean, I think when I look at the DreamWorks, I think my favorites are Ants and Shrek. Kung Fu, I felt like was really kiddie, so I never really connected to Kung Fu as well as maybe some people. And I do have a confession. I'm a movie fanatic, but I actually have not seen How to Train Your Dragon. But because of you, I am definitely going to go see it.
Well, that's good. You have the best ones left. So you have those two films are phenomenal, and the third one's going to be phenomenal as well. So
yeah, well, I'm gonna go to visit you probably on the 23rd, I think, and so if all goes well, and you'll find out quickly that while I'm a movie fanatic, my husband is a animation cartoon fanatic, so we're kind of an interesting pair in that way. So we're big fans. But I sometimes am a little behind on the animation in comparison to him, but I'm sure he's seen it. He watches all of them.
Scott asked a good question. He asked, Scott asked.
Can you link that, by the way?
Oh, I thought I did.
No. Just a fun fact for the audience. For some bizarre reason, my channel doesn't allow me to see live chat until someone links it to me. It's really weird.
I'm laughing at Ozzy's comment. Good taste in movies, bad taste in men. So Scott had asked if it's easier on the sequels because the films are because the assets are reused, or I would say that the look and the look makes it easier. So you've already kind of established the style, so you're not discovering that. But in terms of reuse, we don't get much reuse because the space between our films is so wide that by the time we're doing the next one, the technology's moved on and we're doing things pretty differently. And often, How to Train Your Dragon, we had to redo a lot of assets or bring a lot of them up to speed. So it ends up being a lot of work.
Gotcha. For the audience, whenever you read a question and answer a question, we gotta kind of say what it is because it's not on the stream. So if anybody rewatches, they don't know who you're talking to. What brought you here? I'm gonna definitely go back to animation, but
that's fine. You mean here is in Google Plus?
Yeah, this debate community of sometimes absolute dysfunction.
Yeah, it's been an interesting road. So I have a Facebook channel. There's a nickname that one of my friends gave it. So my Facebook, I have some dear friends that I've had for many, many years who are of all different types. So I have a former Christian roommate who is also now an atheist, who he and I are really tight. And there's a couple of, I guess, for lack of a better term, presuppositional Christians who we are friends with. One of whom I've never met in life. I met him through this other friend. And we've had active discussions for years and years on my Facebook. And we'll have some threads that go 500 long for a month or a month and a half, where we're just getting back and forth with each other, or going back and forth with each other. And so, so I had a lot of, I've had years of discussion with them, very serious. It's pretty much ongoing. But then I got, I think there was maybe an Eric Hovind video from The Place with Bob Graves and Greg, where they were talking to Eric Hovind. And I think that actually, I was trying to remember back, because I know you asked this question. I was trying to remember back where was kind of my entry into this group. And I think I stumbled on Ozzy's videos through his conversations with them. And then Ozzy and I interacted with a gentleman actually who lives not too far from me here on a YouTube thread. And then I got a little bold and started asking Ozzy some questions. We did a hangout, and then kind of started pushing my way in the door essentially, and really enjoyed it. I was really looking for what brings me here is that I'm looking to sharpen areas that I've not had sharpened, and so I actually have a pretty good understanding of a lot of different Christian perspectives. Actually have a pretty good understanding of the knowledge of history. That was something that's a passion of mine. I'm a bit of a history buff, and an area where I didn't have much expertise was in terms of philosophy. I'd read Will Durant's histories back in college, and but had never really gotten into the concepts and really. I find that writing helps me to really sharpen my. I have to really when I have to put things down and really work out the language. I really learn it, and so these hangouts and especially the online back and forth has been very helpful in refining my understanding. I have a long way to go. It's really tough. It's hard when I have to kind of put myself out there and fully aware that I'm wrong somewhere. So, and that's a good experience. It's eating a lot of humble pie. There's a lot of sharp people in this community. So yeah, it's been a good experience. So.
No, you used to be a Calvinist, from what I understand, and not even just a Calvinist, but at one point preaching of some sort, right? Like, or maybe like leading a Bible study or something like that, right? Like, what were you involved in back in the days?
So the way I got into it is, well, so I was raised Catholic in the Northeast. It's not uncommon to find Catholic families, and I was an altar boy for years, but it was much more of a family social event. It was something that was part of my life, part of my family. It was very important to me as a result. I remember my brother's an atheist, and I remember when I found out that he wasn't going to be going to church with us, I was a little put off by that. I thought it was disrespectful to my family that he wasn't doing that. So it wasn't deep with me. It wasn't something that I had taken in the content and it meant something to me. It was much more integrated into my life, and it was important to me in different ways. But then when I got into college, I went to school in the Bible Belt in Ohio, and that was where, when you get out to college, you kind of shed some of your parents' beliefs. You realize you've been invested in these things and you don't have anything holding you to them. It's important to you, to your family, but you realize that you have your own convictions you want to build and you want to understand things. And that first half year, I pretty much stopped going to church. And I would say it was in the spring semester that I started going to Bible study. I'd actually overheard a conversation in one of my painting classes. They were trying to get another person to go to Bible study. I said, I'll go. I was really hungry at that time. So I got involved with an InterVarsity group, InterVarsity Press, or not InterVarsity Press. InterVarsity is a collegiate program on campuses, and they were an InterVarsity group that was hooked up with a chain of churches called the Vineyard.
I know the Vineyard, yeah.
Yeah. So they were all going to Vineyard. And actually, I think my wife was actually in that first Bible study, interestingly. So I went to that Bible study. I was really moved. I won't go into that too much. We could talk about it more, but I want to get to the church that I was in and whatnot. So I had through over time, I started, I really took it in. I'm the type of guy that's all or none. So I don't do anything half-assed. I'm either not doing something. I have a very tough time with moderation. I have to be all in or all out. And so I dove into that the way I dive into anything. And probably about a year later, I'd say like a year later, I was teaching Bible studies at school. And that was what I primarily ended up doing at school. There was a time where I was teaching like 10 a week, 10 Bible studies. I was doing student ministry. My wife and I were friends at that time, and we saw ourselves as kind of partners on doing that. And I would go to conferences and retreats, and I would lead groups there. I and I got very involved in her church, which was a non-denominational church that did college ministry on Ohio State campus. And that was, so when I say I'm Calvinist, it's not in the main thread. I actually came to Calvinism. I'm not, I think a lot of the members of my church were Calvinist, but the church wasn't, we didn't consider ourselves a Calvinist church. I think we held that kind of low view of man, high view of sin, where I think that was just kind of built into the theology of the church. And so, so I ended up getting really involved there. I gave at least a sermon there, but I was very involved in the church. It was a church that was, we all lived within 2 blocks of each other. There were probably about 150 people in the church. Lived in a really rough area of Columbus, doing outreach to the community there, cleaning up the railroad tracks, doing community watch. We would do we had a group within the church that I was part of called Barn Builders. We called it Barn Burners as a joke, but and we would actually do projects around the community. We would go down on campus and do outreach. I was doing outreach to my art school that I was going to, and even to the point where during my senior portfolio review, my teacher said to me, you know, you could be doing a lot better than you are. And I said something to the effect of, I'm doing other work here besides art. And he was like, I don't get what you're saying. And then I kind of like gave him a little wink while I did it. And he goes, oh. So, yeah, anyway, I pretty much went to college to do Bible study, as it turns out. So.
You went to college to do Bible study. You think you went to Wheaton or Azusa or something like that?
Well, I wanted to go.
Fuller.
I wanted to go into missionary work. My wife and I both wanted to do missionary work. And
you know, I'm the opposite. I was like, please God, don't call me to be a missionary. I cannot stand anything that's weird to eat.
Yeah, I don't think I was God don't send me to Dreamworks, but I might have been. I don't know.
God, don't send me to Dreamworks. Wait, please do.
Yeah. So I was very active. I had a very, I did a lot of reading back then, and had really, and I was very sincere and very devout. Even as I did go out to PDI and work on ants, we were active there, and it took us a little bit to find a church, but when we went to, and we were fully in it. And it was my deconversion was very rough for me. And it was something I went through by myself. And it was not something I wanted to do it. This is the part that's really hard for people to take in, because it sounds completely false. But I went into it with trepidation and fear. I was really, really worried I was putting myself at risk. And I actually had to come to a point where I had to decide that I was going to go down the road of asking questions, knowing kind of where I was going with it. And that was really rough. For 6 months, I had stomach aches and couldn't sleep. And it was tough. So
what kind of challenged you to look at faith differently? Yeah.
Well, so we lived on, I think it was a slow erosion, essentially. I think there was who was it? So I can't remember. I think it's Hogtie Champ. Somebody put it really well 4 or 5 months ago. They said in a hangout, or it might have been somebody else, but somebody said that you have to want to know the truth no matter what that means. And that's kind of what I came to. I felt like I had this thing that was bugging me, and I had to kind of confront it, or else I wasn't going to move past that. I couldn't walk backwards. I couldn't retreat from where I was leaning. And I felt like I had leaned that way over a period of time. I didn't have my marriage was wonderful. My kids were great. My job was great. I didn't have any adversity. There was no one had died. No one was sick. There was no trauma. Actually, a lot of people asked me when I left, they said, what happened? What thing happened to you? And it was really just, I think I had there are people in my life. So for instance, I had gay Christian friends at PDI. I had never had that before. When I say PDI, Dreamworks bought a 40% stake in a company in the Bay Area, and they actually made Ants and they made Shrek, and halfway through, Dreamworks bought the rest of us. So Dreamworks didn't have a CG division; they bought into one after Toy Story. So when I say PDI, I mean Dreamworks. But the so I think that I was getting exposure to a lot of people. The Bay Area is a melting pot. There's all sorts of different people. Stanford is a very science-heavy community. I was working closely with people who were raised in that area and work very smart computer. I had 3 really good friends in the R&D group who I think never talked to me about God, but I think it was more of a commitment to rationality and to vetting through issues and getting away from in software. We have a concept of voodoo, like if you wiggle this just right, this happens. I had moved away from those types of notions, and I felt like there were explanations for things and reasons for things. And I think I had come to the point where I realized that if I didn't have a good reason for believing something, maybe I shouldn't believe it. And so I think that's actually what led me to it. And the thing that actually was in my thinking at the time was there was a murder trial in East Palo Alto. And I remember that distinctly because that was kind of my catalyst for looking into societal trends. And I think I started looking at behavior. I think the real point, if I can point to one thing that I had a problem with, I think I no longer believed in sin. I believed in behavior, and I believed in good and bad behavior. I didn't believe we had some previous perfect state. And once sin was an issue for me, then obviously redemption is an issue for me. And the whole thing kind of crumbled at that point. But I spent a lot of time working on it and dwelling on it. And it's hard not to look at the side chat and laugh at it.
I know. They're really funny.
I have to not look at it because I'll get distracted. But there was it was really, really hard for me. And I think at the time that I was deciding that I had to kind of look into these questions that I had, I was terrified that I was putting myself at jeopardy. I was really worried that I was putting, and people may have the last laugh one day. I did go down this road. I did walk away from it. Exactly what I feared happened. And maybe I was my own worst enemy, but I sleep much better having looked into it and having really been honest about it. I didn't have any desire to leave it. And that's another thing that's really hard for people to swallow. The first phone call I had to someone from my original college, it was within the week that I had kind of come to grips, and I had a conversation with this guy who I'd known for many years, and we had served side by side. And he said some crappy thing like, yeah, you know what? I always knew you were halfway there. It was like, what does that mean? I mean, I had really, I had a lot of good time crying into my Bible, and where I was ruined. And those are still good memories to me. And sitting out on summers, going home and sitting out in like there was a grass field not far from our house, and sitting on a rock reading my Bible or reading Spurgeon sermons, or so that's how I got into Calvinism. Was I got hooked on Spurgeon's sermons and his Sovereign Grace sermons, which the missionary who led our church had suggested to me, and I ate that stuff right up. And I never was into Calvin. I was never into R.C. Sproul, but Spurgeon put it in ways where I found it very difficult to argue. And even today, I'm a determinist. I don't see ways around that. It's a little bit incoherent to me otherwise, but yeah. So anyway, I'm rambling at this point. So,
are you a hardline determinist?
Oh yeah.
Really? Yeah, I'm probably a compatibilist, and that's really weird for Arminians because usually Arminians are like free will everywhere.
I,
But
you know,
I think it's very, I mean, truly, you have no control over the society you live in, the family, the genetics you have, how much intelligence you have to work with in order to learn. There's so many things that you don't have control over in the first place, so you can't completely throw out determinism, right?
right. Well, I feel like compatibilism is a compromise. I don't see that really
All or nothing, huh?
once you bore down. No. I'm saying that once you bore down, you have determinism. Once you, if I don't think compatibilism has some aspect out there that enables you to have choices. And I don't even think such a concept's coherent. And I think it's fine when we refer to free will. We're saying that before that we can deliberate on our actions and on potential actions, and we take a course. But that's not to say that you could have done otherwise. You did what you did because of the state up at that point. You had a choice, but your will is compelled by the facts essentially. So um, I don't even know how you pluck yourself out, and that would be terrifying to me if you could. Like, what would be guiding your decisions? What would be we that would be to say that the things that we depend on to shape and help us guide us actually aren't in the end what ends up moving our hand. And I don't know what you're referring to at that point. So yeah, compatibilism I feel like is a that's a way to try to in my view there's when you boil down to the substance, there's nothing different from determinism. It's a way to re-articulate the point in a way that works for the language, I feel like. And I think that's legitimate. Um,
Interesting. Huh. Well, so determinism, it's, I mean, I think it's been embraced a lot in psychology for sure. I've been reading a lot of articles where they're like, yeah, determinism seems, you know, to mesh more with their views and stuff like that. But I find if you go too far with it, I think it's extremely depressing.
well, I actually find it so I'm the opposite. And I never had the problem that I see. I've been fascinated by the problem I see people having with Calvinism on the Google community, because I never had that kind of the doom and gloom, or the impending doom for everyone scenario. I saw it that God, I saw it as a God who is glorified in all that he does, and that it lowered man and it raised God, and I was perfectly fine with that. And I saw any type of pushback on that as being, well, of course you are. You want to think that you have some hand in it, and the way I viewed it was that all the glory goes to God. I thought Max put that really well in his Thirsty Theist that he did, where he said God allows the sinners to remain to sin. I think that's obviously I have real problems with that now, but in terms of theology, I thought it was sound at the time. But in terms of determinism now, for me, in my atheistic worldview, or I don't, it's a loaded term, but the worldview that I hold now, which includes atheism, is that it actually leads me to a point where I don't see vengeance as moral. I see it as highly immoral. But I also see credit. Like, for instance, I work at a very prestigious company. I have a lot of really good things going for me, and ultimately there's no point in me taking some type of pride over someone else. It compels my hand to help others to change the circumstances for them, in an acknowledgement that I had things that led to my success, and that ultimately I'm responsible to that, um, and that any type of anger that I have that boils to the point of vengeance, or to not appreciate that Saddam Hussein's sons um, didn't have um, the childhood that I had, didn't have the exposure that I had, didn't have the genes that I have. Everything about them is not me, and I have to appreciate that that's not, that's an important distinction and not something that I can ultimately fault them. Now, I think that there's punishment is warranted and that um, we have to deter future action, unwanted action. And so I think it doesn't impact justice for me in that sense. It's just that justice means something different than vengeance. I don't see vengeance as justice. So,
Yeah, there's like a whole list of different kinds of justice, and there's revenge, retribution, restorative. There's all sorts of ideas of justice, but I can't even remember the whole list. They all start with R's, but it does seem to be one of the weaker forms of justice. But I don't know if God only. I mean, my view of Christianity, I don't think God has only displayed just a retribution, but I mean the salvation story of sins and the debt being paid in full, right? The atonement. That I guess could be attributed to retribution, right?
yeah, yeah. It's funny when I don't really think about it too much in those terms anymore because I think I don't have, like, actually when you just brought up vengeance in the context of God, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, we're in a theistic discussion. It's something that I think about. I'm applying it to other people that I see who are vicious on the internet, who say things that are completely that fail to take in people's circumstances or how people got there, and somehow elevate themselves and push down others. And so I think I'm thinking of it much more that way, and I find it to be something actually that I benefit from. I benefit from that view. I feel like it's made me more compassionate, and it's made me much more aware of others, actually. So if that makes sense.
So okay, so you deconverted, and I'm assuming that your wife was a Christian as well, right? At some point, because you
Yes.
guys met. Did she
Yeah.
deconvert as well?
My
Davy Kane? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I have uh, my middle my one of my children's middle name is Spurgeon. That's how much we were.
Oh my good lord! When I was
Yes.
I have to say something really quick. When I was a Reformed Baptist, I did eat and breathe R.C. Sproul. Okay, but I didn't. I wasn't planning on naming my kid R.C.
Have you read Spurgeon's sermons? They're really good.
I mean, I have, and if it wasn't for the Calvinism part, I dig him.
Hmm. Yeah. The So back to your question. Um, uh, the My wife was a Christian, and that's part of the reason why I held in my struggle. Was I didn't want to. I was terrified that this was going to result in divorce and my wife leaving me with my and taking the kids, or that we would live in a split household, and that knowing the faith that she had, that it wouldn't be something that would happen. And so there was one night where I was tossing and turning, and finally she said, "Are you going to tell me what's wrong?" And I finally had to come out with it. She said she kind of realized things were going on, although I was still going to church, I was still going to Bible study, I was still my life my life before and after my deconversion didn't change much, other than I didn't go to church. I didn't all of a sudden start behaving any differently than I was already behaving. The and uh, um, I still feel like I have a lot of things I benefited from. My time in Christianity I benefited a lot from that. Actually, even in my supervisory role at Dreamworks over people, I feel like even in how I relate to people and how I deal with people, I got a lot of that through that college experience where I really developed an awareness for others, and there was a lot of good things that came out of it. So I eventually had to kind of come clean with my wife and tell her what was going on, and we said something like, let's start by continuing to go to church, continue to go to Bible study, and let's look through this together and sit down and talk it out. And we'll spend the next, I think we said, in my memory, I think we said we'd take the next 6 months to kind of work through it and get her up to speed with where my thinking was at. And we would kind of discuss it together, and really vet it and really see what was going on. And at the end of it, she left her faith as well. And yeah, and that was itself a really good experience, seeing her very willing to talk through it and negotiate with me through it, not taking it on board for herself, but at least being exposed to it. And I tried not to sell too hard. I was not arm wavy at that point, and I'm still not arm wavy, but I was not, oh, you got to be kidding me. How are you going to believe this stuff still? Like, I was still really on the fence and really having a hard time with it. And interestingly enough, so this is kind of I'm just going to say it. So for the next, when I got to the point where I really knew I didn't believe anymore, I didn't believe in God, it was probably for the next 6 months, I would still have things happen, and I would say to myself, or I had these ways of thinking about seeing causation and things, or seeing things for my edification, or for my teachable moment by things. And I didn't believe it anymore, but I had these habits of mind that took much, much longer to kind of break away. That was interesting to me, how I look back at it now and I feel like my mind was really conditioned to kind of see the world and operate a certain way. And it took a while, even after I had consciously decided that I wasn't persuaded of something, to still have those habits of mind was really interesting to me. So
we talked.
It's hot.
It is hot.
It's hot. Deirdre does not like the heat.
Well, it's funny because usually I'm freezing like a corpse, and my husband's burning like a furnace, right? And I'm the person that's like, I'm cold, and I'll scoot over towards him, and he's like, oh, get off of me, woman. And he scoots over, and I'm like, but I'm cold. And usually by the end of the night, he's falling off the bed, and I've got the whole bed somehow. So usually I just bring in like an extra blanket, but it's October and it's 105. For goodness sakes, I'm dying.
Yeah, it's not pleasant. I should be able to go swimming tomorrow. That's how warm it is.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's like
yeah.
mid-October.
I mean, I have a friend up the road that has a pool. I could be like, yo, I'm just coming over. What's up?
Yeah. So anyway, it was a good experience with my wife ultimately, and it's something that I think strengthened us more than anything. So, and again, that's really hard for Christian friends of mine to take on, to hear, because there's eye rolls all throughout everything I just said to you, and that's been the hardest part. I got to say, is it's really hard to have someone essentially say that your experience was not genuine. And guess what? If I was still a believer, I would agree with them. So that's what I believed at the time as well. So
if your wife remained a believer and you...
No.
What? She didn't?
She didn't, no.
But if she did, and you didn't, do you think that would have caused a strain?
I think raising kids, it would have caused a strain. Certainly. Yeah.
I was just curious because people always call me a snob, like when I say I think it would be really hard to marry out of your religion, especially when it comes to raising kids, if you're serious about your religion. If you're not serious about your religion, and I'm quote unquote a moderate, but even quote unquote moderates, we have our hills to die on, and we have ideals and worldviews and stuff like that often are influenced by religion. So when you bring people, you can bring friends into your life and stuff like that, but I would imagine if your spouse is like one thing and you're another, and I'm Jewish but I'm Christian, but we're gonna raise our kids as Jewish. No, you're not. I think suddenly you have some just an extra conflict that I guess in marriages conflicts naturally happen with finances and all sorts of stuff, so one that you could almost have control over.
Yeah, I think given some of the lessons we had to teach our kids, or some of the ways we were very big on not having hard, fast rules, and very much teaching them about context and responsibility. And and giving them virtues to work around that would help inform decisions rather than hard and fast rules. And that is a difficult way. And I have 3 great kids that I can trust um, way beyond what I would have been able to trust myself in my own childhood. And so they allowed us to kind of interact with them that way, but they're very independent and they have a good, we try to give them a good head on their shoulders to make decisions, to think things through and not have hard and fast rules, but actually appreciate the what makes something good or what makes something bad. So
Gotcha. So, let's go back to animation real quick. You know, I just looking you up on IMDb, it's like you've got, gosh, you have a really amazing resume. Just in 1998, you said the first one you worked on was Ants, and then we got Fat Cat on a Diet, which I have not seen. Sorry, Shrek, which I definitely have seen. Shark Tale, which I've seen. Over the Hedge, which I've seen. Flushed Away, Shrek the Third. I've seen all the Shreks. How to Train Your Dragon, which is your favorite, right?
yes.
Gosh, Kung Fu Panda, The Croods, which I haven't seen as well. But aren't you going for like a Oscar? Is it this year?
Yeah, so it's a technical achievement Oscar. So they have science and technology awards at the Academy, and that's the point in the program when you're watching the Oscars and they say, earlier this month we awarded our science and technology, and they show a photo of all the people, like they kind of pan over a photo. That's the award that we're up for a given piece of software that I contributed a lot of ideas to. That was when I started at the program at the studio, and I was partnered with the R&D individual who was writing the software, and I think he's the real magic behind it, but he will tell you otherwise. And so we'll just agree to disagree on that. But they were phenomenal. And that was a really special time because CG animated films, there was only one out at that point. We actually, Ants was the second CG animated film ever. And so we were doing things for the first time and trying to figure it out. And so that film will always have a special place in my heart. But as well, I had this really great opportunity to help develop tools for our future films and help contribute to how people would work for years. And so this tool we just deprecated it a couple of years ago. It was actually in use at the studio for 16 years or something like that, which was huge for this industry where software changes over so quickly. So we are in consideration for it. The Science and Technology Awards are a little interesting in that they will cast out during the year. They'll say, we're considering these categories, lighting and rendering programs, programs for equipment for cameras that do this, that do camera shake or do lens distortion, or they'll cast out a couple of key categories, and then people will apply in and they'll pick out people that they're going to consider or groups that they're going to consider. We're under consideration, and I think actually we did pretty well. But one of the other people that was presenting was a guy who's up for a practical device he created for a camera that was used in the camera shake for Saving Private Ryan. And I sat there and watched this guy talk about how they used it on the film and how he designed it back in the day. And he's got one there, and he machined it, right? So and basically the point of that is that each year they're changing up the categories. And what they do is when they interview us, they actually record all of that. And they're trying to figure out who is developing what when across the industry. And they create a history of the industry. So it's fascinating to me that they're actually logging the history of film each year through the technology and trying to kind of chart out it. So it's a little different in that. It's a bit of a legacy award, essentially. And I went 2 years ago for one. I wasn't actually listed as a contributor, but I'd helped do the presentation and facilitate us winning. and that was Chris Pine and Zoe Saldana were there doing the presenting, and that was a really fun event. So this will be my second time, but I'll actually would be a contributor on this one.
Yeah, I've heard that CG artists in movies, just like outside of the animation, but moving into, I guess, Pi had that big scandal, sort of, where a whole company went under. And
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of hours that you guys put, like whether it's animation for an animated film or CGI, like Pi was just pretty much all CGI, is just amazing. I mean, and I think sometimes we become so spoiled as consumers that we really don't know how much effort it really goes into these
Yeah.
movies. We
I
bitch
was
sometimes about Twilight having bad CGI, which it does at certain points, and you're like, oh, that's so bad. But then, like Pi had amazing CGI, but a whole company went under. So, like, apparently you
yeah.
guys need to eat. I don't know. I'm just saying, like,
Well, the scandal with that as well is that company had been around for over 20 years, I think. So they were one of the giants in the industry for a long time. So, but they're very difficult to make. It's a lot of moving parts to organize, to wrangle. It's a lot of communication that needs to happen. You have the strains of story changes. So the interesting thing about computer animation is we don't get a script and then go out and shoot it. We get a script, we start shooting it, and then we change it up as we go. So we have this great flexibility of being able to continually screen the film in these work in progress stages and make changes month after month after month and continue to revise it. So I think that's why a lot of times the quality of animated films, story-wise, is pretty high relative to the general, to all films. They're extremely expensive to make, but you can continue to refine the story and develop things and move past flaws. So that makes it really difficult for us when there's one guy on Peabody and Sherman. He worked on it on the whole film, and all of his sequences that he finished went out of picture by the end of it. So he actually didn't have a single shot in the film after working on it the entire time. And that happens. There you have sequences go out of film because the tone of the film's changed, or they've decided to mix it up. So it's taxing. They treat us really well. We have a really great environment at Dreamworks, and they're very, very good to us. But they also know that they require a lot from us, and so it's a good relationship. So
that's awesome. Yeah, DreamWorks, man, has just been pretty amazing, and I mean, I still remember the first movies that I saw from them, and it's just, I don't know, it was kind of neat to see a new kid on the block besides Pixar, and your enemy. No, just kidding. I saw the little jab that you did with the Lightyear.
Oh no, that wasn't a jab. It was actually that I didn't want to use some of our own property and get in trouble for it. So,
Yeah.
well, use Pixar's.
But the pictures mix of that and StarCraft all together. It's kind of fun. So just for
Yeah.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
But no questions are coming on.
Yeah,
I
I
think
have
that
some
some of you,
questions. So
there's a
you
lot of
mentioned,
questions about your hairdo. Like, how do you get it that way? Dragnot, I think, proposed that it was electricity, and then Ozzy said you were hung upside down or something. And
well, Ozzy's not too far off. I do blow dry it upside down, and then it literally takes me about 3 minutes to do my hair. It's not like a complex process or anything. So I just have this gunk. I just push it up out of my way. So
And you had that hairstyle for a few years because I was Creeper. I did look you up on Facebook before just to see, and I was like, oh, all your pictures are public. So I was scrolling through, and I was like, oh, this is before before Bert was a silver fox. He had really dark hair, and also at one point fire red flame head hair, like the Heat Miser.
yeah, that was
I like
that
the
was on
Heat
cruise.
Miser.
Yeah, I do that from time to time. I haven't done it in a little bit, but I've had like blue, aqua blue hair, white hair. So yeah.
Would you consider
Uh,
yourself eccentric, like in a healthy way, like a creative way?
I don't think I'm eccentric. Um, that's probably as eccentric as it goes, and that's pretty much I'm pretty plain Jane. I dress very plainly for someone who throws all sorts of crazy color in their hair. So I'm pretty straightforward. I enjoy sports and baseball and football, and I'm a huge New England fan. I play video games.
I'm sorry, Patriots are scumbags, but we'll forgive you. I mean, by default, I just cheer for the Chargers, and we're like the team of disappointment. They're like, yeah, Rivers is amazing. Oh, Rivers, what did you do?
They should try cheating more. They might win some more.
Yeah, cheat to win, right? That's the Patriots model. Sorry, Patriots.
They're fun to watch anyway. So somebody had said about what are the qualifications?
Yep, Dragnut says what the qualifications for being hired at Dreamworks.
It depends on the field. So if you're going into one of the kind of more technical departments, definitely a computer science background, programming, and preferably in graphics. We hired from a lot of. So I'm in a couple of weeks. I'm going to Clemson University. I've actually worked with Clemson for a couple of years now, and we work with Texas A&M. And there's certain schools we work on where we pull in technical talent from schools. But if you're going into, it depends on the role. So if you're going to more of a artistic role, like you wanted to come and work in my department, I would be looking for someone who had some scripting ability and some technical ability on maybe some programming background, but very, very light. And I would be looking for their artistic work and their exposure to certain technologies that we rely on. So usually they're art school students who many of them will go for their masters and will have some type of computer programming within that, some light scripting, or maybe they worked on a ray tracer for a computer science course or something like that. So
recently, Jackie got a chance to visit with you, and gosh, you approached me and said, I would love to be interviewed. And I was like, who are you? And that was like maybe a month or two ago. I can't remember. It was a while ago.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm a friend of Ozzy's. I was like, cool. Let me figure out who you are first. And then, you kind of had me at Dreamworks. I was already sold, I guess. I'm going to interview you. But I wanted to know who you were, And so anyway, I was really excited that I got to say, hey, Jackie, have you met Bert? And I think it's always a benefit Jackie's somebody that's just graduated at Savannah's art school or whatever, and I think she's a sweet, good person, and I think that it's beneficial to know as many people in the industries that you want to be in as possible. So like it was kind of cool to see that you guys had met up and at least maybe probably talk shop a little bit, maybe just a tiny bit.
Yeah, I enjoy having people by the campus and chatting with them. So I'm not a shy guy. So that was very nice to meet Jackie and talk with her and Kevin. So
yeah, it's really cool. Okay, so Ozzy asked a question.
Yeah, I see that. So, do you want to read it?
Yep. How and why does he maintain civility and seriousness on the G+ debate discussion threads when they start to lose their cool? I have noticed that about you. You do tend to keep civil. Sometimes after a while, as we saw in the 500 comment thread of doom, I start to go, I've lost my mind, and I'll start going, here's some gasoline. If you light the match, it's your fault. And so I'm kind of I turn into a dick suddenly because I've finally just thrown up my hands and said, Jesus, take the wheel, But how do you keep civility when things go crazy around here?
Well, probably because I've only been here for so long. So once I build up a history with people, I'll probably be a little less likely to extend some space. But no, I think I actually get that to some degree I get a lot of respect from the people on Facebook who I engage with, because we keep it civil and we keep it structured and we all benefit from that. And I think I know pretty quickly whether someone's going to agree or not with me, and or whether I'm going to agree with them. I can tell, I can to some degree I can figure out whether I'm going to be persuaded. And I want to hold out that I may change my mind as the conversation goes on, but sometimes that you know that you're not going to be changing anyone. But I think understanding is important. And actually there are people who I talk with on my Facebook account who we have talked for years, and we've known that we weren't going to move each other for years, but we grow deeper and deeper understandings of where each other's borders lie and why we think the way we think. And so it's much easier to respect. And I want to keep this structured so that I don't lose my train of thought. But when you can understand where someone's coming from, and you're not straw manning them, you're number one is you're addressing the argument they're actually putting forward. And so you can actually learn a lot more from that than if you're putting forth something that doesn't resonate. If you're just sitting there waiting to try to take a cheap shot, you're not going to get anything out of that. You're not going to grow in any way towards understanding how it is it came to that position. So I think that's really important. And I think as well, there are people whom, because there's no generosity on their part towards my position, I have to be very careful in terms of how I articulate it and how I put it forward. And as a result, I'm growing in refining my understanding of my own positions. And really, I just today, was it today or yesterday, with Arcane, he caught me saying something. I was a little sloppy, and actually it was an important distinction. And I said, yeah, my mistake. Let me rephrase that. This is actually what I meant to say. And that will stick with me. So I think it's important. I think I don't have any problem with somebody not taking my positions, but I want them to know what my positions are. So I think that's kind of what I'm after there. I have to say it's extremely frustrating because these threads are open. So on my Facebook, I have a very, it's a closed thing. It's not, their friends maybe can comment on it, but generally won't. And so it ends up being, it's some kind of the same people having the conversations, and it can be very civil and structured, and you can carry these things on for a long time. The difficulty I find here is that I'll walk away and have 3 hours of meetings, or be the weekend and I'll want to get out for the afternoon. And then I'll come back to a thread that had a kind of a good progress going in terms of understanding. And I'll find gasoline all over and the whole thing's gone and the conversation's gone. And that's fine. That's, there's histories.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
No, I'm just kidding. I usually leave your threads alone. I don't automatically throw gasoline. It's when people have been just insane, then I'm just like, oh, is this what we're gonna do then? Okay. But maybe there's probably an element that I enjoy surprising people by not, they'll throw some bait out there. They want me to, they're pushing my buttons. They're trying to get at me. And I want them to understand that, no, you know what? I really want to understand what it is you're saying, but I'm also trying to help them understand what it is I'm saying. And so I think that there's if I can get back a little bit of benefit of the doubt with them, that maybe the next time we interact, they'll be a little more respectful. So, but again, I don't have the long histories, and there's some really, bullshit stuff that happens on these, and people lying, or people just completely being disrespectful. And I don't blame people for lighting it up. But it's, I'm going to try to hold out for as long as I can with that. This message goes out to Remy. Remy, unblock Bert. He's a good guy. He's a good guy, Remy. I'm pretty sure Remy's the only one that's blocked me. It happened almost immediately. And I really didn't mean, like, I think maybe I had pressed him on a point, maybe one post too far, but I wasn't trying to be aggressive. I was genuinely trying to understand his position. So it's fine, whatever. Yeah, usually he's pretty chill. I mean, in my interaction, so it was one of the funniest things I'd seen in a while. I was like, "How did you get blocked?" Because I was part of that string, and I was like, "I don't even know what happened either." He's like, you were like, "Was I rude to him?" I'm like, "I don't think so."
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe he was having a bad day. I don't know. One time I did lose my temper with Bert. I argue with like 15 Calvinists around here, and I'm like one of the few that isn't around here, besides, other people I don't talk to, like Thick Shades. It's funny because I've done rounds and stuff like that, and he's like, "Well, let me argue from the Calvinist point of view as an atheist," and I'm like, "No!" And I don't know what I was really curt with you. I can't remember what I said. I was like, "I have enough Calvinists. I don't need an atheist Calvinist too."
Well, and initially I was like, wait, I can't tell. Is she joking? And then I realized, like, oh no, she's really pissed.
I was really mad. But to be honest, I was in a lot of pain that night too. So I was just like, I've had it. No more Calvinism, especially from you.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing on the Calvinist thing that surprises me a little bit. Even with the atheist argumentation against it, I don't think you should believe something because of the consequence of the ramifications of what that would be. Like, what if God is the way he is and you find that unpleasant, that doesn't have it. This doesn't speak to the veracity of it at all. It doesn't. And so I'm a little surprised when atheists jump on the consequences of a given representation, and Christians for that matter, because there are Christians who are telling atheists that, look, you don't get to pick how your God is, but then they'll turn around and say the same thing to the Calvinist. And so I think it really needs to be a sober, dispassionate discussion of what is the merits of the case, and then if that's what that means, then either you're not in a position to appreciate that God, or you you either don't have the perspective you need, or your God's a dick, or whatever. But it doesn't change the facts, or it doesn't change what if those hold water, then that's the way it is. So I don't understand those arguments. The arguments from consequence and what that would mean is a little bit different. I guess I can understand it from like an ontological argument where if it's the greatest conceivable being and you don't consider that to be a great attribute, then you might reject it on those grounds or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because you were such a Spurgeon lover, and I can see why you're a Spurgeon lover. He's like the warm, fuzzy Calvinist, and then RC gets a little rough here and there, but he's still okay. But then if you ever actually read John Calvin, you're like, holy crap. What the heck? Doomed from the womb. And then if you go on to read John Piper, who's also, I'm sorry, he's an absolute piece of work. I'm sorry if people love him. I do not. I will tell you this. I like Tim Keller, and Calvinists don't like Tim Keller, but he's a Calvinist that I happen to like. And maybe it's because Calvinists don't like Tim Keller, because Tim Keller isn't a jerk like Piper. Sorry. Piper's a jerk. Piper's very Calvinist. So I have this feeling that your version of Calvinism was probably similar to mine, which was a little less of being a dick.
Spurgeon was not. Well, I think Spurgeon put things much more eloquently, and he had a passion for what the beneficial consequences were, but he certainly like ripped into those who would reject that view. So he was definitely a fiery preacher. He didn't mix words at all. He laid it out there. But I think that and I haven't read the others, so I don't know. But I thought that his writing at least balanced it out, so that you saw the merits of what the benefits would be. And I don't believe any of that anymore. So I have real issues with that some of those notions, but yeah.
Gotcha. So we're going to move on to another question. The question comes from Tanya. A question for Bert. Out of all the gods that you've heard about, If you had to choose one as being the one, which one would you choose and why?
Well, I would. I don't find this is gonna be really probably off-putting to atheists or unbelievers, and I don't mean it the way it's gonna sound. I don't find the concept behind well, man, that's really tough. I don't like so many of them. I don't find the concept behind Christianity to be without appeal. The romantic narrative that's in the heart of it is is not unattractive. I think that the uh, um, what the consequences are of what that means for God to have had that circumstance or that to have that narrative, there's a lot of unappealing things as well. So I don't know that I'd want that. But if it's, I would go if I was persuaded that it was true, I would believe it. I don't have things I'm waiting to that I'm privileged to do that well, that's probably not true. I don't have these great vices that I'm waiting to that I'm enjoying right now as I'm not a Christian. So I don't man, this is a really awkward question, I gotta say. I don't not fond of the deist perspective. I actually don't mind that the universe is if it's the case, the thing is I don't know, right? So if it is the case that as Alan Guth says, that universes are free lunches, and these are net zero energy, these manifolds that get expressed. I'm okay with that. If that's just the persistent way it is, I don't have a lot of, I don't lose sleep about my own death. I lose sleep over other people's deaths who would it be impactful to me, but I'm not worried about my death being I don't want my death to be painful, but I'm not worried about my death being as it was before I was born. If it's oblivion and there's just nothing, there's no Bert. I don't have any problem with that.
I think Ingmar Bergman said oblivion is bliss, right? So you gotta love the Seventh Seal and all that stuff. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that I don't have this like an afterlife of eternity worshiping and glorifying God is not it's a very who was it somebody maybe it was Bart Ehrman or maybe it was Hitchens or somebody said that there's volumes and volumes and volumes articulating what hell is like, and then you get these little books about what heaven's like, and it's because it's not a terribly interesting place. So I I would never think that it was this place that I'd go fishing and see people from the past and I'd enjoy this new nature or something. I don't know. That's tough. So yeah, anyway, sorry. It's just a little bizarre to me.
Yeah, it's weird because people will sometimes like, yes, Perrier. Here's an advertisement for Perrier.
No, I'm saying I got off the vodka, so
You started getting weird, huh? So, like it's funny because I hear atheists sometimes tell me why I believe, and I think it's really funny. It's similar to when Christians tell atheists why they don't believe or that they're repressing their knowledge and stuff. And so I have all sorts of things said to me, and it really gets irritating. People go, "Oh, you have a fear of death," and it's like, well, not really. I don't. I think of it similar to you. Hang on, 1 second. We're talking about finances. Stand by.
Let me see if I can find a question, maybe.
Sorry. Anyway, so there's a parade going through. Cha cha cha.
Yeah, I wish I could remember what I was going to say. I would have picked it up from there, but I got kind of fell into a hole.
My husband's behind me. If you want to know why I'm not on camera, he's up behind me going, "It's so hot. It's so hot without a shirt." Say hi. Say hi.
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 How do you feel today?
Yeah, hot.
Yeah, see, that's what he just keeps passing by, going, "It's so hot."
So you were saying, or do you want to continue, or do you want me to say something?
What the temperature is all the time.
Yeah, it's 105. Sorry, Scott's talking to me. So he's just dying of heat exhaustion, just like the rest of us. Our brains are melting. So yeah, I completely lost my place.
We were talking about you said you weren't worried about death at all.
Oh yeah. So like it's just not the carrot on my stick, but the idea that, like, you know, starving children that die and infants that die and there's no nothing for them. That's all. Sorry. Life offered you nothing. That's all you get. Too bad. That sucks. Like, to me, that these injustices, which I think we should all fight. I'm not like a theist that goes, "Jesus, take the wheel," and I don't care, and I'll just pray for you. Like, I do believe that we should take action, but this idea of, and I think I was talking to Befuddled about this, but this idea that this is all there is in a big sense is scary to me. It's not my own death, because I think of it like you do, which is like, if I'm annihilated or if there's oblivion, it's sort of like, well, you didn't know what it was before you were born, so how is that any different? But the idea of maybe the process of dying would kind of suck, you know, like being eaten alive might suck. You know, there's certain things that I wouldn't want to die, like, you know.
Well, I think,
but
tying it back to something you were saying was that you said you don't care for people telling you what you believe. That they're not taking you at your word. They're saying you're suppressing something. And obviously, I get that a lot as an atheist, that I'm suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. And so, what I actually said it to Arcane yesterday, was that, I think it was yesterday, I'm mixing up my days, was that he said you will be without an excuse. And I'm like, I don't want an excuse. I am, as far as I can tell, I'm being sincere in my desire to know what the deal is. And if I come to a wrong conclusion and there's some being after I die that wants to put my feet to the fire over it, I got no problem with that. And maybe I am, but as far as I can tell, as far as I am aware, I am trying to remain open to the possibility that I'm wrong. And I've thought about Christianity many times. I've told my friend, I said, in terms of a literal interpretation of scripture, like in terms of a young earth creationist, even if Jesus showed up today and said to me, "Bert, this is the way it is," it would not make so many things. There are so many propositions that I don't understand that seem to have to have things against them in such a way that I cannot be persuaded of them. And I would have such cognitive dissonance. Like I would be utterly, I'd be utterly confused in terms of what to think. It wouldn't help me in the least. It wouldn't help me in the least to settle so much that has led me to be persuaded of what I believe today. And so I'm okay if that's the way it goes down, then I'm okay with that. I don't take that with any pride or anything. That's the ridiculous thing, is I'm in the worst position to know. So I'm not gonna, point the finger back and say, whatever. Anyway, I think you get what I'm saying.
yeah, I gotcha. So you're not one of those atheists that's like, if it turns out the Christian God's real, and maybe even Universalist is real, you're not going to be like putting your fingers up, going, "F you, I want to go to hell." You're not going to be one of those atheists, then, I guess, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have.
I've been on threads where atheists actually brag about that. They're like, "Yeah, I'll be like telling him if there was a real God, I would kill him. I would stab him to death." Actually, I was on, I don't know if you know the podcast Deeper, or not Deeper Than Dogma, wrong one, Dogma Debate with David Smalley, and I interact with those guys a lot. And I was on one of their threads, and they were like, "If it turns out God's real and you're standing before him, what are you going to say?" And one of the guys was like, "I'll kill him." And then all I said back in response was, "Please read Moby Dick." Just saying, you can't kill God. Like, read Moby Dick. It doesn't work out for. It does not work out for Ahab.
Yeah, I don't have. Well, it's hard for people who believe to understand, but I don't have animosity towards God, mainly because I don't believe he's. It'd be like saying that it's going to sound completely disrespectful, but I don't have animosity towards any fictitious creature. So it doesn't enter my mind that way. I don't have some grudge. I'm persuaded that the thing doesn't exist, so it doesn't factor into anger towards it. Doesn't factor into my thing. I think the things that have been said about this being are messed up, and that the misconstruals or the narratives that have been created are messed up in certain ways. But I don't attribute it to a being, because I don't hold it that I'm utterly persuaded in that I don't have any type of, I don't secretly in the closet, like, hold some shred that believes that this thing is the case. It really doesn't, I don't operate that way at all anymore. It just doesn't factor into my thinking. So, and that's really hard for people who believe to understand it. That is completely, it's a little bit like with my brother when he said he was an atheist. And I was like, I'd never met an atheist before, didn't know what one was. And I was like, I don't even understand how that's possible. It boggles my mind. So Moby Dick.
Yeah, Moby Dick's kind of, it's similar to Whiskey Dick. It's the cousin. It's when your SSRIs interfere with your life.
Yeah. Oh man, now I'm getting shit from my jaw from Benny Ocean. It's the lens distortion.
Oh. Okay, you okay?
I'm putting my head forward so it shrinks my chin.
That's
Sorry.
funny.
Okay.
Well, you do like Jay Leno, right? So
Do I?
I think that was you. You were like, LA has Jay Leno, and I'm like, sweet.
All right, let's see if we do have any more questions here, or do we want to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
put some questions in the sidebar, so let's see where we're at here. Ozzy asked you, do you have plans for your YouTube channel?
I really want so part of it is that number one, recording videos is really, really hard. And I'm not good at it. I feel like I've made several that I just cast away. And I think actually maybe I need to do more conversational ones like this, where I don't worry about, I enjoy writing and I enjoy getting my thoughts down, but actually putting that into a video, it just never comes through the right way. I don't have the Scott Clifton touch with that. But I've done a couple of these longer videos for my friends that I don't have posted that people really seem to enjoy. I would love to help with basics that I didn't, very, very basic things like what's knowledge or that's not even basic. That's the problem, right? Is that these are things that people take for granted, and I took for granted for a long time. I wouldn't mind laying some of that out actually for my children. I would actually like to leave some bits of some breadcrumbs for my kids to follow after me when they want to look into the things that I was looking into. I want to be able to kind of help them with a couple of those key concepts that helped me along the way. And on the philosophy side of things, in terms of epistemology or in terms of beliefs and things like that. But as well, I have a Christmas video on there that I enjoy quite a bit. And I enjoy the history of Christianity quite a bit. And and breaking down notions that aren't easy to do in short formats, which is part of the problem with making that. So, yeah, I'm unhappy with everything I post up. It's just terrible. Other than the Darth Vader Aussie mandates.
I love the Darth Vader Aussie. If you haven't gotten to Bert's channel, he has the death of philosophy, and you just have to watch it. It's just too funny.
I think the other thing is that
long-winded philosophy specifically.
I think the other thing is that I think I have so much to go, so much room to grow, and I'm enjoying these discussions because when I encounter someone who's been there before, and I'm boldly putting out something that is wrong, I will defend it knowing that I'm probably going to change my mind, and I'm almost pushing on them to try to get them to push back. I want to understand why I'm wrong, and then I'll take it on board. And so that's also why it's really difficult to go ahead and put. That's why it's really difficult actually to put something, put a video out that articulates a view that I suspect within 6 months I'm going to have all issues up and down with them. So I'm just way too self-conscious for that stuff. So
yeah, it's weird because when I put up this channel, I was like, I was trying to feel for how people were. I was actually dropped in this community by an atheist, going, "Go be a moderate, have fun, have a nice day." And it was like, okay, sweet, hey, I'm a moderate, and like half people were like, "You're not a real Christian, heretic, burn her," and the other half of the people were like, "Fuck moderates," which is the atheists. Like, you guys aren't special either, and so yes, we aren't special. We still believe in the woo and everything else, so you can slap us in the face too, but with words, please, with words, not in person. But what is funny is, like, I was watching, and it's like, I'm not really great at debate. I mean, I was in one actual formal debate, and you can even tell, like, my notes collapsed and I got lost. I was kind of arguing on emotion a little bit, but I'm talking about spiritual things, so, give me some room. But I was in one actual formal debate about hell, annihilationism, and universalism in a three-way debate. And, I just am not naturally a debater, so it's like, what can I offer, And so I've been kind of interacting and watching and stuff like that, but because I'm a Kierkegaardian and I think faith is beyond reason and stuff, like, I'm like, what can I offer, really, except maybe an experience? I can talk about experience and faith experiences, which, only go so far with people around here. So I felt like there wasn't a lot I could offer, but one thing I can do is I can gab with people. I can talk with people. And so I started with these interviews for just kind of get my foot in the door and decide, well, what can I do with this channel and stuff? But I might be making some faith-based content here, but I'm going to probably throw it in its own list because it's really not... It's more about the faith instead of arguing for it, so I'm going to put it in its own playlist probably. And so if you're an atheist and you think it's gross, well, then don't look at that playlist. If you want to argue with it, that's fine too. You can have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. But it is tough to sometimes find your niche because we're all not Aussie, knowing the ins and outs of philosophy. We're all not winning at debate. I try not to soapbox because I can fall into it really easy, but it is kind of hard to find, like, where's your place in this community? Are you at all of some use, kind of thing. And so I understand this idea of maybe holding back or being careful with how what you put out, I guess.
Yeah, it's not so much that I'm worried about scrutiny. It's more of the time investment and wanting to make sure that I'm doing things that have that I'm investing the time and it's actually lasting. And I think actually something like I really like what Floyd actually does for the community when he does his breakdowns of certain texts. I know it drives some of the Christians crazy, but I feel like there's a real lack of perspective among Christians. And I think this was true for me for a little bit when I was a Christian, but I got really good at getting into the history of Palestine and of Israel and of the history that led up to the context that Jesus lived in. And I feel like that is, I feel like those are worthwhile things that might be border on certain areas that I'm interested in that could benefit the community. And I kind of enjoy the historical aspect of it. I feel like it's really surprising to me. I have a lot of Christians who say to me, you can't quote scripture out of context, but almost none of them are actually addressing the content of the Gospels in the context of the first century context that Jesus lived in. There's a lot of just huge gaps in people's knowledge in terms of the maybe from 4th century BC to the present day for most people, but even to the relevant 1st, 2nd century AD. And I think that those are areas that Christians would benefit from having some more information on. So anyway, yeah, that was kind of a weird side, but where were we?
Dragnut made a suggestion. You could animate videos and just have some of us voice the characters. Can you imagine Drag's voices? That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, that would probably get me blocked by people pretty quickly.
Can you imagine you could do like an animation of Tasty, and he could just do Tasty's voice? How awesome would that be?
Yeah. I could just keep doing avatars for people and win them over that way. So
Ozzy's asking why he has a homoerotic following. I tease him because the boys around here, the young men, I shouldn't say boys, the young men around, I don't know, 20 to 26 are like, yeah, Ozzy's just so amazing. And they just go on and on about Ozzy, and then one night they were like showing pictures of Ozzy, and they're like, look, he even chops wood. And there's like Ozzy in the forest. I think he's got his shirt off or something. He's chopping wood. I'm like, wow, I didn't know Ozzy was an outdoorsman, but there is sort of this, Ozzy's just so dreamy. And I hear it more from the young men than anybody, and I just think it's funny. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You should be flattered, Ozzy.
Why aren't there more Christian women in the community, or are there and I just don't know it?
That's because almost every Christian woman so far has been labeled a heretic. With it, well, I mean, let's think about it. Actually, it's a great question. Why aren't there Christian women in the community? Well, okay, let's look. We got Sabella. Moving on, we have Shani for Christ, which Shani, I think, was kicked out of the clown car posse, from my understanding. So Shani is sort of on her island by herself, and she lets Tommy and I and a couple others visit her on their island, but she kind of does her own thing. You have me, who's labeled Robin Bell, which is Rob Bell if you don't know, and is a heretic or something, I don't know. I make the gospel too friendly and loving. And you have Ermine, who's a Unitarian, and they say she doesn't even know Jesus, so they throw her out. You have McKay, who's a Universalist, and they treat her like she's Satan's child. So this is what's happened to the women in the community. We're usually labeled heretics if we don't fit a very... Amy Farmer's free of that. Amy Farmer keeps her head down. Amy Farmer's a Calvinist, conservative, INTJ. People are idiots unless they prove themselves otherwise. Just kidding. Kind of. But Amy Farmer's really kicked back and chill, but she keeps her head down and she has a low profile, so she's very selective. So Amy Farmer's kind of avoided the heretic label, but a lot of the women, we've kind of gotten crunched. So what's happened to the women? A, they're not embraced. B, maybe we're a little too liberal in some way, one way or another. But I've noticed that men in the community get forgiveness in ways that the women don't. So Peripheral Prophet is not a Trinitarian, not in the same way everybody else is. He gets forgiveness because he's a fundy. We have other people, I won't mention names, that preach drunk. They get forgiveness because they're male and a fundy. Maximus and I can say the same exact thing in the same exact way about hopeful universalism, but he'll get a pass because he has a penis. I don't know. I'm just saying, I noticed it. I just noticed it. I don't know.
But he doesn't rub it on things, though.
He doesn't rub it on things. Max is a very chaste, frustrated man. But I love you, Max. Max is a good guy.
So I was going to say one thing I would like to see more in the community is one of my favorite series, and I plug it anytime I can, is there was Ozzy was doing a thing with John F. McDropout and Gibran Ludwig, and Max actually was doing it as well. Was the Sophia ex Nihilo, Sophia ex Nihilo, which was this group that I think they had like maybe 6 or 7 texts that they did, and they would actually get together and talk through a text, and they talked through Plato, through oh my gosh, I just completely blanked on everything, on Euthyphro and on the ontological argument, Anselm's ontological argument, and on the anyway, there's a bunch of great discussions there, and the thoroughness that with which they explored those topics and those texts were really wonderful. I got a lot out of those, and I really, really enjoyed those quite a bit. So I'd like to actually see more of that, more of breaking down with a group of cordial, civil. There was a couple of Christians, atheists, and it was a mix of people, and it was really quality stuff. I really enjoyed that a lot. So I'd like to see more things like that, actually. I wouldn't mind doing some hangouts with Christians and akin to the discussions that I have with my friends on Facebook, where it's really a push to understand and not. And I think atheists, to some degree, have a hard time understanding, if they haven't been in the faith, have a hard time understanding Christian positions. And I think it would benefit them to actually have some understanding of why certain things are believed. So
I think it's a two-way street, right? So what I am seeing sometimes on the Christian side is we'll bowl right through, and we'll be like, hey, come listen to us about the gospel. Come listen to us about, apologetics. Come listen to us about evolution, even though I don't think that's a hill to die on, but for some people it is. Come listen to us about our worldview. Come listen to us about abortion. And you'll hear them on, they're just bullhorning or preaching pretty much. And then they won't receive anything. And by receiving, I don't mean like, oh yeah, you're right. But you can tell that they're actually not listening. I was in a hangout with Run Gav, and Tommy Hall and Gus got into it, and Gus was responding to something, and it was a little bit long-winded, but it was a decent response. And after all of it, Tommy's like, I didn't hear you. and maybe that was, a freak thing, but the point is that I see that a lot. I didn't hear you. I'm not listening. I'm here, but I'm not here to listen. I'm just here to, talk. And
it's really, really difficult when your starting position is you're disingenuous, right? That as soon as if that's how you walk into it, you're not going to be able to hear what the reasons are or take them seriously, why someone might think something. If you've walked in saying either you don't really believe that, or you're believing it because you're taking it on board because you desire certain consequences for yourself or certain liberties or whatever, then there's you can't respect at all what the person's position would be, and you're at a loss. Then that's the shame of it, is that you're missing out on a great opportunity for growth, even if you're not going to agree with the person. And I think to some degree, you said it goes both ways. Part of the reason is that I do think that sometimes the atheist group torches the place up, right? It becomes and part of that is because they don't respect the people, because the other people haven't been respecting them, and so it's this kind of unfortunate situation. But yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. This is about you, really, not me. So, like, I'm not a bitter person at all.
So what's your problem with Calvinism? No, I'm just joking.
Here's my problem with Calvinism. Calvinism. Well, Romans 9 is really hard to argue with, but Calvinism, there's a couple things that I have a huge problem with. One is that God becomes the supreme villain. And by that I mean he allows everybody to be born and come into this life full knowing, designed, not just knowing that they'll choose differently, but you are designed for destruction. You are designed for wrath. You are made for God's wrath so that he can take pleasure in your destruction. That is my problem with Calvinism. I don't find that to be true of the gospel. I also think that it's a twisted version of what Paul was saying. And while I think there's some predestination, I don't think it's in all things and all ways. So yeah, I do have some problems with Calvinism. And every time they go, well, no, that's not really how it is. Yes, it is. It's saying, I made you this way, and now I'm going to punish you for making you this way. You have no choice to be otherwise, but I'm going to punish you anyway.
Yeah. Actually, Drag had two good questions. So I think the first one was his as well. The first question was whether my lack of faith adversely impacts me at work, at my workplace. Most definitely not. I think partially because I'm in LA, partially because I think that the demographic in my industry is a little different. So I have a lot of friends who are atheists who I work with, which is very different from my experience in different parts of other parts of the country. Some are not, but I think I don't think it's watered down. I think that there's a lot of different faiths represented where I work. There's we actually, because of circumstances related to how modeling works. There was a big modeling facility in Utah that used to service the industry up through the late 90s, and then it broke apart. And that was the go-to place for modelers, or from all the modeling before the late 90s was outsourced. And so interestingly, this modeling place broke up. All those people moved out into the industry. And so a lot of your modeling departments across the industry have supervisors who are Mormon, or good portions of their department that are Mormon. We have a high Mormon population, and most of them are modelers at Dreamworks. And so we have a lot of different faiths. I don't have any problem talking openly among many people. I'm having conversation. My Facebook page I have hundreds of friends from Dreamworks, both past and present, and I have a religious discussion with them all the time on there. Some are non-believers, some are. So I don't feel any impact as well. The gay population in my workplace is it's a high percentage. And so I got a very tolerant attitude about it, it's conducive to tolerance. Dreamworks definitely prides themselves on tolerance. And a lot of the people I work for, both alongside people who are over me, people who work for me, are of all different types. It's a real melting pot. So I think that makes it really easy to be there and not have any issues. And the other question you had asked was, what was the biggest problem, or what was the biggest thing I lost, or what was the biggest loss incurred by my leaving the faith? And I'd say that it was, I had a lot of really good friends whom to some degree I've lost contact with them, but as well, I think some of them willingly kind of let me go, who I had very dear experiences with and had really dear relationships with. We lived all within 2 blocks of each other at this church, so we knew each other inside and out. It was a church that believed in full accountability. And this is going to really baffle a lot of people's minds, is that there wasn't anything that if there was anything that people didn't know about you in that community, you were hiding on purpose. It was a complete open environment. Everybody was very, it was a community, and it felt very kind of early Christian church philosophy. in terms of the importance, if you read Acts, the importance of the community and everybody sharing. And it wasn't a commune, but it had those aspects to it, which actually, if I was to go back, that's what I'd want. I'd want to have that type of experience or that type of relationship with people. And so I lost contact with a lot of those people, and that was actually that was unfortunate. I don't resent. A lot of people take me to resent my past, and I don't at all. They don't get that from me. They get that, I think, from other atheists who fall out of the faith and have a lot of bitterness about it. I was there for my own, I believed it, and I was the one that believed it. I got a lot of good things out of it, and I've moved on, but I don't resent those years. I'm disappointed with myself for taking numerous positions. I took a egg in the back at a pro-life rally, and I tried to convert, I did Bible studies with gay men where I was purposely trying to change their behavior. And all that stuff, I look back and I want to go back and punch myself in the face, but I don't resent anybody that was around me or even necessarily the faith itself. So what was the straw that broke the camel's back? I covered that earlier a little bit in the I think it was an erosion, but if you missed it, Helena, you can go back and check it out. I talked about it a bit.
Steiser's waving his hand up in the air going, I do game animation. So maybe you can send him a note and say, hey, if this is what you're interested in. I don't know, but we'll maybe contact him later. So
sure,
he's always working on building games and stuff like that, but that's not really where you are particularly, but I don't know.
Yeah, I do some of that on the side. We used to build game levels for we used to play a lot of Quake back in the day at Dreamworks, and so we were all building
Quake. That's old school.
Oh, so World of Warcraft. Let me talk about that for a second. So
oh wait, side note, World of Warcraft, both Bert and I play World of Warcraft. I played it for almost 10 years. I play as Shaman, Resto, and Ellie. How are you doing? What do you play, Bert? And Horde. Horde. Very important.
No. My first character was a hunter, and then I played Shaman seriously for a while through so I was in it vanilla through at the initial release, and then played Shaman. I played Hunter through vanilla, Shaman through Burning Crusade, and then midway through Wrath of the Lich King switched to Druid. Because I was sick of seeing other druids just having ridiculous mana at the end of a boss fight, and I'm sitting there starving to death. But anyway, the funny thing about Dreamworks is that we had a guild for probably on I think it's still probably out there, but heavily active for probably 7 or 8 years. And we were pretty decent on server for a small little guild. But the funny thing is that the fun fact is that the How to Train Your Dragon CG supervisors, all of us were guild officers, and we would go home on Thursday nights and raid. We were active all throughout it. So it's kind of funny. Whenever I go speak at a campus, I do actually a lot of college work. And anytime I go to a college, I like to break out those facts. And pretty soon I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm going to have to find a new game to reference. So
I've discovered when I do live events like this, I have a 2-hour limit. And if I keep going past that, the front of the broadcast gets clipped and never to be found again. So what I'm going to do is, I guess we're going to start to wrap this up, and then I'm going to open up off-air hang. I'm going to ask you a few questions at the end, that I kind of ask everybody else. Is there something that you're involved in, that you're passionate about, that makes the world a better place? Besides your beautiful movies, that does help make the world a better place.
I have 3. I have 2 college students and a son in high school. We give to, we've done charity work before, and pretty active every year. My wife's heavily involved in the school community here. Dreamworks has, they have programs they had this program for a while called Give a Day, Get a Day, where you could give a day to any charity and they would compensate you for that day. So they're basically paying for you to do charity work for someone. So I haven't done anything in a while though, actually. And I've been pretty busy just with my 3 kids and all the activities that they have. Actually I do. So my son was captain of the robotics group. They have 60 or 70 people at his high school. He's now graduated, but for 4 years he was heavily involved, and I was a mentor and would help mentor. I wasn't one of they have a bunch of mentors from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory that came over and helped. That's not too far from where we are. But I gave a lot of time to that. And my son, in his involvement, he also works with the Girl Scouts, and for 4 or 5 years was volunteering most of his Sundays to Girl Scouts to teach them robotics. And I was also helped facilitate and work with the scout leader there. So, but that's pretty much the extent of it. Voice back, are you there?
Yeah. I was doing something. Sorry.
No, it's
what
fine.
What the heck? Let's see. Drag asked a question. Let me scroll up really quick. Well, actually, Paranor says, "Do you watch Doctor Who? Do you watch Doctor Who?"
I don't actually. My wife would not get into Doctor Who. It's probably the only geeky show that we didn't watch. So, yeah, huge X-Files and huge. I didn't get into Sherlock too much. I liked Mr. Robot's pretty badass.
Well, the real question is, do you like Firefly?
You guys are gonna hate me. I don't like Firefly.
That's it. The
I thought it was
over.
so over.
That's it.
My friends overhyped that so bad. I loved what's the movie they did? I actually saw the movie first.
Whedon?
Serenity.
Serenity. Okay, yeah.
I liked Serenity a lot.
I pretty much like anything Whedon touches. So. Yeah,
he's pretty great. I like him a lot. So.
Okay. So I think Drag was asking, has any of the MMOs that you played influence you as an artist?
Well, my friend who was also a guild leader, he was the guild leader for a long time. He actually stopped playing during Mists of Pandaria, before Mists of Pandaria came out, because he was going to be the visual effects supervisor on Kung Fu Panda 3. And he was worried about didn't want an influence there. So he actually bailed, and he had played since vanilla. And then I think he came back and raided some more afterward. So I get a lot out of their animatics. I actually know a lot of people over there. I'm good friends with one of their big recruiters. I've got her talking to my daughter because my daughter potentially going to the film effects industry. And I have several friends who work over there. And their work is always, the cinematic work is obviously always fantastic, and their Blizzard artwork team is phenomenal. I really enjoy the games, but I'd say creatively I get more from their artwork than I do from the content in game. So just, I think, well, for WoW anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for WoW, for me, WoW's like, I think a lot of the draw is the social structure and keeping things running and raiding and working together and the teamwork and stuff like that. I think that's definitely my draw. But
that actually we did. I would say that the team building aspect of it was pretty huge. I think those are some of the best problems. We took on some really hard things, and we were a top guild for raiding on our server for a bit. And those were like Ulduar, doing that and trying to figure out those puzzles was really, really fun. And we were on the bleeding edge for our server. So I think those are really, really good and helpful. So guild management's really good for people, for leadership.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's there's, I think big about that, where someone said I'd totally hire somebody that's a GM of a high-end raiding guild, and this is why. So there's a lot of strategy involved. There's a lot of people working with people involved. I was always good at the human resources end. I wasn't always good at being a raid leader because I pretty much have ADHD in that sense, and I can focus on my stuff, but not everybody else's stuff. And so I used to team up with a gentleman who had autism, and we have played for like 5 years together. And he's an amazing raid leader. Like, he sees everything at all times, where everybody is at all times, and can call everything out perfectly. And so I was human resources, and he was like the raid leader, and it worked out. So, but hey, I'm just gonna wrap this up really quick, and then there's gonna be a link for the off-air hangout. In your mind, in the way that you view this community, what do you think we should aim for and work towards? What do you think is most important and beneficial here?
I'm a big advocate for civil dialogue that pushes towards at least understanding. You're not gonna, more than 9 times out of 10, you're not going to persuade the other person, and you'll know it going into it. And I think keeping it somewhat civil is helpful. That said, I can't imagine where it would maybe get kind of boring if everybody was so civil. So maybe I'll just fill the niche for as long as I can keep it up. And then I'll start tossing gasoline like everyone else. So, but no, I think more edifying content. I'd like to see more of a push on some of the I'm big into the philosophy end of it now. So in regards to epistemology and breaking down how you come by positions and what justification means, what does the evidence mean, what does truth mean? Actually, I had a really good conversation with, I think, Uriah about the pragmatic theory of truth, which I found really interesting. And there are aspects of it that I would like to know more about. And I find Aaron Voluntarius' views very interesting, and Jimmy Stevens, I find his views interesting. And there are intelligent people who I disagree with, whom I want to understand why it is they think it, and maybe I can glean something out of that. So yeah,
very cool. All right, well, it's been awesome getting to know you. If you were interested in some of his Dreamworks stuff, there was a little bit of a conversation about it earlier as well. And it's just been fun to have you in the community. We've sparred a little bit, or really, we don't really spar. We have dialogue. I've seen you have dialogue with Jimmy Stevens and other believers, and you've always kept your cool and expressed yourself extremely well, and so it's something I've noticed and appreciated about you. So it's been fantastic getting to know you. If you don't know Bert Poole, you should. He's a pretty cool dude. He's got cool hair. And yeah, so I'm going to wrap this up, and there's going to be a link to the off-air in 1 minute, and I'm going to drop it into the live chat. I'm going to close this off and say always attempt to be kind, though sometimes it's impossible, but we will try. We've seen this week that it's been difficult. Try to be charitable. I think that's one of the most important things in these conversations, is to be charitable to each other when you find yourself on different sides. And most importantly, don't be a dick. Thank you.
So long.